I got more solo records than most of them that really hit. Remember that? You dig? Like I got a lot of gold singles and I got some action. You dig? It's gonna be hard for a lot of people from New York to win with Capo. And I got freestyles I could do. All, in New York City, it's gonna be hard. I would say that for anybody.
You know, on the record,
it sounds like he want to do one with 50 Cent. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like Jim.
Nah, I don't want to do nothing with that sucker. You heard? You need to leave him out the conversation.
When 50 Cent drops a warning, the whole rap world stops breathing, and this time, the spotlight locked dead center on Jim Jones. It all sparked when Jim got slick during an interview, tossing out a
bless him here by a lot of praise and a lot of love.
50, remember that whole situation? I was around for that.
Yeah, 50 was they had their own thing. Like the city was different at that time.
Hold on, don't try to speak to it.
Oh boy.
Here you go. Touch your mother. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Do you feel like you know, I'm trying to think of an ask because you're my man. So,
that's right.
Don't do that. That's my business, man. Don't do that to me, Dice. Do you think that? So, at the whole time, like 50 tried to do a chess move, right? But you know, the whole thing with him and Cam. And at the time, you know, because remember Cam called up and that whole situation, and he was saying all these things. Do you think that could have led to any? Like, you think Killer was mad at that? Because you ain't say nothing at that time. At the time, you ain't say nothing. When 50 did a Cam, he's gone. Now he's going when he's Curtis, you ain't say nothing. He was like, Jimmy's and all that. You ain't say nothing. We was on you. We was watching you. We was waiting.
Everyone knew was aimed at 50. He said, "A lot of these dudes act tough for the cameras. We know who's really outside." That one sentence, it blew up the internet like gasoline.
He wanted that. He was watching them be that, like Mace be that and Cam be that, and looked at, and it was finally, he had one. And I just looked, and I knew, I just took the shot, Murder, to see, because I wasn't sure he was going to go for it. But I was like, we like Jimmy better than you anyway, Cam. Then you got to watch and see how he responds. And then, when you see, he like, oh, he really like that. Give me this, give me Jimmy. Yeah, tell him we want him.
Lean on fire. Fans didn't even need to guess who he meant, because if there's one rapper who's both boardroom sharp and street certified, it's Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. And here's the thing. 50 doesn't play with subliminals. He doesn't drop hints. He drops statements that shake the entire industry. Disrespect him, and he'll turn your words into a headline. Within just hours, 50 fired back. Not with a track, not with a rant, but with a cold, surgical Instagram post that froze the culture in its tracks. Some of y'all better chill before...
You ain't say nothing now. I don't know why you didn't at that time. I know now you don't care. You took it. But do you feel like it was a chess move on his part? Because you ain't say nothing. Do you feel like everything happened in perspective? Because, you know, after that, Killer just...
Nah, it wasn't a chess move. Like, I'm looking at a perspective. 50 said something about Koch, and Cam took offense to that. And at that time, I was riding regardless. So me not saying nothing mean I'm ready to go. You heard? If I say something,
But you still had ballin' out, Capo. You had a voice. You didn't say nothing.
Yeah, because you're not listening to me. Because I was ready to go. I'm still Capo, bro. I was ready to go. So you gotta watch what you say out here. I'm still a smart man. You think like you project that shit on any type of camera, any type of you get just caught up with anything. Ends up coming from them type of situations like that. Like, this was all tricky. But when he said that shit about the Koch and Cam took offense to it, I was like, man, in my mind, I was like, I didn't really understand the correlation of why he would take so much offense, because he didn't say the diplomats, but he said some said Koch is a cemetery label, whatever, like that. I was like, we could have probably flipped that so many ways, but it was just the way Cam was feeling, and any way Cam was feeling at that time, I was ready to do it. And then
before I remind the city what really happened. That's all he wrote. No names, no tags, no laughing emojis, just raw, unfiltered threat energy. Everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. The timing? Too perfect to be random. The tone? Ice cold. The message? Loud without a single word of noise. 50 was telling Jim, directly, publicly, watch your step. It wasn't trolling. It wasn't promo. It was power. The kind of silent dominance that reminds everyone why 50's name still carries weight in every city, every conversation, and every corner of the game. 233-2. The comment section went up in flames. Fans flooding it with fire emojis, popcorn gifts, and warnings like 50 about to expose somebody, and Jim better chill before the receipts start flying. Because let's be real, when 50 says remind the city, he's not talking about rap beefs or studio gossip. He's hinting at those real-life moments rappers pray never see daylight. 50 isn't just speaking, he's strategizing. Every move is precise, every word layered. While others are still learning the game, 50's already 10 steps ahead, playing chess with the culture itself. And when he fires a warning, it's never for clicks, it's a statement from the throne. Within hours, hip-hop blogs and fan pages lost control. Headlines screamed, 50 Cent back in villain mode, and Jim Jones might have poked the wrong giant. That clip spread everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. Even people close to Jim were allegedly calling, telling him to fall back before things got real. Because in hip-hop, there's one unspoken rule. Never poke the man who built an empire out of beef and survived every war. But now, the whispers were growing. What did 50 really mean by remind the city? Was it about some Harlem story nobody's dared to repeat? Whatever it was, the tension fell heavy. Because when 50 gets in that mood, he doesn't just talk, he reveals. And when he does, entire legacies start shaking. Jim tried to laugh it off, but 50 responded like a general, calm, confident, and cutting. He said, hip-hop's a competitive sport, sure, but some people shouldn't even mention your name until they've earned it. Then came that cold smile. Jim Jones? Who's Jim Jones? He's not on anyone's top 10, maybe not even in his family's. 50 compared him to the loud guy on the bench yelling at Jordan. All bark, no game. To 50, this wasn't beef. It was comedy. And deep down, everyone knew he wasn't lying. Because from the Dipset versus G-Unit days to those street rumors that never hit blogs, this tension wasn't just about music. It was personal. But this isn't 2005 anymore. 50 Cent isn't just a bulletproof vest rapper. He's a mogul, a TV powerhouse, a global brand. When 50 speaks now, the culture doesn't just listen. It reacts. His words trend, his tone shifts the room, and his presence demands silence. That's why his warning didn't sound like a diss. It sounded like a verdict. Because 50 doesn't argue. He commands. Meanwhile, Jim, still chasing the DVD era spotlight, didn't realize the world had moved on. He was stuck in nostalgia, while 50 was playing on a completely different level. The boardroom, not the block. Then came the clips, the flashbacks, the throwbacks. Jim tried to remind everyone of his ball-in era, but nostalgia couldn't hide how the game flipped. Back then, Jim wasn't even known for bars. He was just the loudest voice in the crew, catching a lucky moment. 50 saw that, called, and kept it pushing. Jim, though, stayed chasing validation long after the world stopped asking. And that's what made this clash different. 50 wasn't defending ego. He was defending legacy. His post wasn't a diss. It was dominance, quiet, calculated, absolute. Because here's the truth. 50 doesn't trade insults. He trades consequences. His words hit harder than diss tracks. Jim thought he was giving the internet a viral moment, but 50 flipped it into a reality check. The question stopped being, what did Jim say, and became, what does 50 know? And when that question starts circling in hip-hop, it means real history might resurface. To understand why it hit so deep, you got to rewind to early 2000s New York, when the city was divided between two kingdoms, G-Unit and Dipset, Queens versus Harlem, grit versus gloss. Jim Jones was Harlem's loudest soldier, proud, flashy, and always reminding the world that Harlem ran things. But 50 didn't need to scream. His story spoke louder. He built an empire, survived bullets, crushed records, and took on entire labels, and still came out untouchable. Jim talked real, but 50 lived it. From Southside Jamaica, Queens to Hollywood royalty, his life became a masterclass in control. So when 50 said, remind the city, it didn't sound like a threat, it sounded like prophecy. Because when 50 presses that button, it's not about clout, it's about legacy. Behind the scenes, word is this wasn't random. 50 had been hearing Jim's slick comments for months. Subtle digs about Mays, Cameron, and finally, about 50 himself. Jim had been poking the Harlem hierarchy for too long, and now, the smoke was finding him. Online, fans started clowning him, calling him Harlem's noisy neighbor, a man who talks more than he performs. And they weren't wrong. Because in 2025, no one's impressed by who's outside. They're impressed by who's winning. That's why 50's silence hit louder than Jim's words. Because power doesn't bark. It moves quiet. So when 50 dropped that warning, it wasn't nostalgia. It was resurrection. That get rich or die try energy came roaring back. The confidence, the precision, the weight. It reminded hip-hop why his name still commands fear. 50 doesn't debate online. He drops evidence. And when he said remind the city, every syllable carried history. From the block to the boardroom, his reach runs deep. Jim's response? Total silence. No live, no post, no defense. And in hip-hop, that silence means everything. Because when 50 calls you out and you vanish, that's not peace. That's pressure. Now, the internet's on detective mode. Fans, blogs, and old-school insiders are piecing together the puzzle. The deeper they dig, the more this starts to feel bigger than music. Whispers of old street business, unfinished money plays, betrayals never written about. Whatever's coming, it's not just another rap feud. It's Harlem versus Queens, pride versus power, history versus dominance. And when 50 decides to remind the city, the whole culture listens. Because one thing's always been true, when 50 moves, the industry freezes. And here's the craziest part. Nothing's ever been confirmed. But when 50 said, remind the city, the people who were there, they knew exactly what he meant. Old heads started dropping cryptic comments like, yeah, 50 remembers that night, or he was there when it went down. Old interviews resurfaced, with voices overlapping, tension thick in the air, people trying not to say too much. One voice even said, don't rush this, let him finish, this was business. You could feel the history, the kind that's never written, only whispered. Because when 50 moves, it's not noise, it's chess. Every post, every word, every silence, perfectly calculated. And everyone watching knows exactly what comes next. And that's exactly why the phrase remind the city detonated across the internet like a cultural bomb. One sentence. That's all it took for fans to lose their minds. Some swore it tied back to those Harlem Street stories from decades ago, the kind whispered about but never written. Others believed it ran deeper, reaching all the way to those classic label wars, back when 50 and Cameron clashed live on Hot 97. Everyone remembers that moment, Cam barking, "You can't ban the whole Dipset," while 50 just laughed calm and untouchable like a man who already knew he'd won the war. Jim was right there beside Cam, Harlem's loudest soldier, loyal to the end. And even after all these years, that energy never really faded. 50 evolved into a media empire, while Jim kept tossing slick jabs, still holding on to that old rivalry. Now, it feels like karma circled back, knocking straight on Harlem's door. Fans couldn't stop saying the same thing. Jim should have just kept 50's name out his mouth. Because if there's one universal law in hip-hop, it's this: 50 never forgets. He's strategic, he's surgical, and he's absolutely relentless. This is the same man who humiliated rappers, executives, and even billionaires effortlessly. From Ja Rule to Diddy, no one's been too powerful to fall. When 50 marks you, you don't just get roasted, you get erased. And if history's taught us anything, Jim might be the next name carved into that list. Because when 50 locks in, the only question left is how bad it's going to get. And this time, the tension feels darker, sharper, like something personal simmering underneath. Then came the interviews, long-winded explanations, half-truths, and flashbacks to the old 2000s chaos. Jim tried to defend himself, talking about the Coke label era, and the day 50 called it a cemetery label. He said he was ready to ride for Dipset, that he stayed silent out of loyalty, not fear. But every time he spoke, the hole got deeper. It started sounding less like pride and more like damage control. And in hip-hop, that's blood in the water. Because once people smell hesitation, they circle. And when 50's watching, one slip of the tongue can turn into a global headline. That's exactly what happened. The more Jim explained, the more people stopped believing. Then 50 struck. No rant, no back and forth, just one post. Cold, precise, devastating. A caption so simple it froze the whole culture in place. Within minutes, rappers started unfollowing Jim, blogs began resurfacing old clips, and Harlem's usual chatter went dead quiet. The atmosphere shifted instantly, that eerie calm before a thunderstorm. Then just as quick, 50 deleted the post. And that's when everyone knew something was coming. Because when 50 deletes, it's not regret, it's strategy. It means he's already plotting the next move behind the scenes, where the real power plays happen. People who know how 50 moves weren't surprised. He doesn't shout, he applies pressure. He doesn't argue, he positions. And if he pulls something down, it's because the next hit's already in motion. That's what makes him dangerous. Silence is his deadliest weapon. Meanwhile, Jim's out here pretending it doesn't bother him. But the streets can see the tension. Every podcast, every vague tweet, every no comment feels like he's sweating under the weight. Because when 50's name enters your orbit, it's not beef, it's pressure. And the world's watching him squirm, waiting for the next move that'll shake the room. The truth is, this isn't about rap anymore. It's about pride versus power. Jim built his brand on Harlem pride. The street voice, the tough talk, the authenticity. But now the internet's rewriting that story, calling him the man who woke up 50 Cent. And that's not a nickname anyone wants. Because when 50 wakes up, he doesn't just end your moment. He rebuilds his brand off your fall. Every meme, every headline, every blog post becomes a marketing machine for his dominance. Jim reacts for views. 50 moves for legacy. And right now, that legacy is Jim cornered. You can see the contrast plain as day. 50, 2 decades deep, still relevant, still feared, still printing money. Jim, still hustling, but his biggest moments lately come from interviews, not records. It's a brutal truth. One man's silence breaks the internet, while the other's noise fades in the algorithm. That's why fans keep saying this moment exposed something deeper. Jim's chasing relevance. 50 is relevance. Jim wants recognition. 50 commands it. That's the difference between history and headlines. And that's why Remind the City didn't sound like beef. It sounded like a reminder to everybody in the game. Power moves quietly. Because let's keep it real. 50 can drop a single cryptic line and hijack the entire internet for a week. That's not fame, that's power. No promo, no hashtags, no features, just a caption and chaos. While Jim's scrambling to figure out how to respond, 50's already 3 steps ahead, watching the whole board. Even celebrities are dropping hints, saying, Jim better chill while he still can, because if there's one thing everybody agrees on, 50 doesn't bluff. He waits, he gathers, and when he's ready, he drops proof. The kind that doesn't just end careers. It rewrites them that SO when 50 said, I'll remind the city. That wasn't a threat. That was prophecy. He doesn't talk for attention. He talks when the next move is already set. And right now, the entire rap world's holding its breath, waiting to see how deep this goes. Because with 50, silence isn't surrender, it's preparation. He's built his empire by knowing when to strike. And if this is one of those moments, Jim might not survive it. Some fans think he'll clap back, post something slick to save face. Others say he better stay silent, because when 50 gets locked in, it's game over. Nobody matches his energy and walks away clean. Every blog, every fan page, every content creator's waiting now. Will 50 drop another caption that melts the internet? Or will he let silence do the heavy lifting while Jim crumbles under pressure? No matter what happens next, one thing's already clear. 50 Cent just reminded the culture why his name still commands respect. In a generation full of loud talkers, he's still the one who can stop time with a single sentence. And Jim, he's standing at the crossroads. Stay quiet and preserve pride, or speak up and spark his own downfall. Because when 50 steps into the ring, there's no such thing as equal footing. He doesn't share the spotlight. He owns it. And this time, the entire city's watching to see who's still standing when the silence breaks.